Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast. We just finished talking about the both Bills and Texans from the perspectives of what they look like moving forward. Now we're going to be going off the field a little bit here and talking about the situation around the Kansas City Chiefs stadium proposal and what the future looks like for Chiefs Kingdom. So, very interesting here, where in February, Chiefs chairman / owner Clark Hunt announced a plan to renovate Arrowhead Stadium. The costs were projected to cost about $800 million, and the proposal would have the taxpayers of Missouri cover over 50% of the cost. I actually think more specific to Missouri, it was Jackson County. I'm not a politician. I don't know exactly how that all works. But again, Hunt said that he and his family would help cover $300 million in this, but the rest would be on the public. This was just voted on by Jackson County the other day and was rejected. This is a very interesting situation here where you're talking about the Kansas City Chiefs, who of course have just won back-to-back Super Bowls, have the face of the NFL in Patrick Mahomes playing there, and all of that being said, when you look at the Hunt family and their perception even within that Chiefs fandom, it's not a very positive review from my understanding, and it seems that the players sort of add on to that sentiment with the fact that the NFL report cards were released earlier this offseason. For those of you who don't know, the NFL has started this new activity over the past couple seasons. The Players Association has started this exercise where the players on the team are asked to grade a variety of different aspects of the team that they play for, from head coach to owner, cafeteria, locker room, all of those different things. It is a very fascinating sort of experiment there that they do. We did a video about it when they first came out, but if you're interested, I would definitely recommend checking that out. But during this report card, the Hunt family was given an F-, graded as the worst owner in the NFL, and it seems to be tied in the fact that Hunt has a perception of being a little bit cheap and not investing into the team and the facilities. They were 31st in training room, 26th in food and cafeteria, F with a graded F as a locker room grade. So definitely not the highest of praise here for Hunt in the way that he has run this organization. Now, obviously, his idea right now is to renovate a bunch of things with Arrowhead Stadium that would likely improve a bunch of these things, but to propose an $800 million plan here that you aren't even willing to cover 50% of the costs yourself, it's definitely not the best look. Listen, I don't have anywhere near the amount of money that could possibly even imagine covering $400 million. So who am I to necessarily make comments about this? But again, it was your proposal in the first place to make things that expensive. I'm sure you could have, downsized the plans a little bit to maybe not be quite as renovated as you were once hoping, but at least you improve the environment there at Arrowhead, and you can actually get the taxpayers to be on board with this, which as things currently stand, seems that they're not. I did find it interesting because I wanted to look a little bit into at least what type of revenue that the Chiefs bring in. Like I mentioned, they just won back-to-back Super Bowls. They have the face of the league, the most marketable player in the NFL, plus Travis Kelce, who's also probably in the top 5 or so most marketable. After, he started dating Taylor Swift, maybe top 5 is even too low for him. But, this is the premier NFL franchise of the past 5 or so years. But according to Forbes, where they do this evaluation of how much each not just NFL franchise, but franchises in all of sports all across the world, how much they are worth. And they actually, in 2023, now keep in mind, this is before the Chiefs just won. It was a few months after winning their first Super Bowl, second really in the Mahomes era, but the 2023 Super Bowl, and before they won this year, they were ranked number 35 as the total evaluation of their franchise in the world, 23rd in NFL franchises. You had some interesting teams ahead of them. There was the Titans, the Falcons, the Colts, all of these different franchises that, I mean, I don't want to dive into necessarily and tearing apart fan bases, markets, all of that. Kansas City isn't necessarily a big-time sports market, but for the amount of success that they've had over this past decade or so, I was just surprised, and we'll see. I would have to imagine they grow over the next couple years as well. They were up one spot, I believe, from the 2022 evaluation, so at least some progress there, but still not all overwhelming in terms of how much they seem to be worth. And it does sort of spark an interesting question in that dynamic between the Hunt family and how much they're willing to invest versus how much they are actually worth. I mean, at this point, you think of it in terms of buying stocks. This seems pretty low for Kansas City, that's going to have the best quarterback in the NFL for the next decade or so. So, I don't know. I can't say I know too much about the full X's and O's of the business perspective in the sports world. If we have any viewers out there that can provide a more professional explanation of all of this, I would be all ears. But because of this whole situation, there has been some speculation about the idea, well, could the Kansas City Chiefs actually relocate? They've been there since 1963, I believe. So when they moved, where did they move from? It was Dallas, Texas, which has also sparked a little bit of noise here, as the Dallas mayor, Eric Johnson, has posted to social media about the idea of the Chiefs coming back, said he's confident in Dallas's ability to host a second NFL franchise. And obviously we know, I mean, the Cowboys are the Cowboys. I think that it precedes just the fact of being in Texas, but would be very interesting to see sort of how all of that would play out. Now, Dallas isn't the only option here. It does seem like the biggest of markets that have been, the NFL has sort of pushed for trying to add to the repertoire here, where LA, they wanted to get a team out there. They actually got two out there with the Chargers and Rams both moving recently. They had the Raiders moved from Oakland to Vegas, which is another big destination. But sort of in all of that is the fact that there is St. Louis just an hour or so away from Kansas City. For those of you who don't know, Kansas City is actually in Missouri. So just an hour away within state, you could likely retain most of your fandom. It wouldn't be this moving the franchise all the way across the country that could possibly, exterminate the remaining fan base there. Just some interesting things to consider with this whole conversation. Again, whether or not this actually happens, it's probably more of a long shot than anything. I feel like if you're in the situation of Clark Hunt here, it's probably just trying to lower your spending in terms of these renovation plans. I do feel like it is a very bad look for him. The Chiefs graded out 31st overall in all categories in terms of that report card that was given during the offseason, which is a brutal look. And these surveys that the NFL Players Association The surveys come out during the season, I believe. I'm not sure exactly when, but it's during the season, I know. And this, there's plenty of time, obviously, for things to change here. But now that the cards have come out after the fact that the Chiefs just won their second Super Bowl in a row, first team to repeat as Super Bowl champions in 2 decades, I do think this is a really bad look for him. And again, whether or not he is handicapped due to the fact that the franchise may not be worth as much as the typical NFL fan may believe, I don't know. That's not really for me to decide here, but he's got to do something here, I think. And ultimately, it's not like there's ever going to be a boycott necessarily or anything like that. Luckily, they have Patrick Mahomes, where you have an organization finishing at the bottom of this report card, which again, a newer initiative from the Players Association. But if that's the case before, maybe you have players not willing to sign with the organization. Lucky for them, they have Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, who can sort of, dampen out that sort of fire that takes place seemingly inside of the facilities themselves. But I don't know. It's interesting to see whether or not they're actually going to try and make steps in the right direction here to try and bring up the image of the franchise itself, but of course themselves if you're the Hunt family. Again, not that with the Chiefs you're in any danger of a boycott putting you out of business necessarily, but could seemingly hurt them in the long run, at least perception-wise, and we'll see how this all plays out there. We will definitely be keeping you updated here on the GSMC Sports Podcast, but that is all we have time for on this subject. We're now going to be taking our final break, and when we come back, moving on to some NBA talk with Julius Randle being ruled out for the remainder of the season. So stick with us, and we will be right back.